Hi, everybody. Ann Gillespie Mitchell here. Today, we're going to talk about 5 things you should do every time you find an article on newspapers.com. It's easy to get caught up in the new, exciting information that you find. But if you follow these 5 steps, not only will you have that information, but you'll have even more information to add to your tree and share with your relatives. So, what are the 5 things you need to do? First, we'll make a clipping. That'll allow us to save it and share it. Then we'll save it to our tree on Ancestry and associate it with the appropriate facts. Next, we'll check out the rest of the newspaper. Is there anything else of interest in there? Or maybe we can just gain context. Then we'll search for other people in the family or that we know that might be in the area. And the 5th thing that you want to do is to see if there are other newspapers that are related from that area and that time that might have more information about your people. First, I'm going to look for an article for my grandmother's second marriage. She married a gentleman named William Crenshaw. So I'll type his name into the search box and I'll get a list of articles. From here, it's easy to refine my search. I know they were married in 1957, so I'll type that in. And I'll only look for papers from 1957. I know they got married in North Carolina, so I'll click North Carolina on the map. This gives me a list of articles with that criteria. If I click on the Marriages tab, what you'll see is just marriage announcements that newspapers.com has identified. I can look down the list and I see some articles, but none of them really seem to fit. So I'm going to look at these top 2. I open them in new tabs. This is a personal preference. It makes it easier for me to jump around and compare information. I noticed in this one that some of the information has not been transcribed or identified correctly. So I'm going to edit it. Her last name at that time was Turner, so I'll update that and click on Save. I noticed that the marriage venue was not OCR'd correctly, so it was scanned in, it wasn't correct. So I would like to also update that. So it was Hawthorne Lane Methodist Church. I also noticed that the place was not entered. So I know that it was in North Carolina, so I'm going to enter that in as well. Now that I've made these changes, I can make a clipping of the article. You'll notice there's a Save to Ancestry button, the Edit, and the Share. The Edit button will allow me to change the title that I'm going to save the clipping under. You can do it now or you can do it later. I'll enter Marriage of Jenny Payne Turner and William Crenshaw. I click on Save. And then I could save it to my tree, but first I'm going to make a clipping. And this is, once you say View Clipping, this is what the clipping looks like. You can download a PDF, you can print it, you can share it, or you can edit it. You'll notice over here on the right, the source is already written for you. If you go to the very bottom, you can click on Show the Article in OCR, and this will show you what the OCR from this paper was. You'll notice there are going to be mistakes in here because OCR, or optical character recognition, is never perfect. Now I've created my clipping. Now I have an article that I would like to save to Ancestry. From the clipping, I will click on Save to Ancestry. I sign in, and up pops another window. In this window, you want to make sure you're on the correct tree. My tree is called This Tree Twists the Line. I'm going to start typing in the name of the person in my tree. Oh, that's right. Her name is Jennie. There she is, Jennie Elizabeth Payne. I click on Next. I have the title of my article, I have the date, I have the location, and then I can enter something if I like. I want it shown on my life story, and I'd also like to attach it to her second husband. So I'll link it to another person. I type in his name, and when he appears, I choose him, and then I'm going to click on Save. Then I can look at their profile pages just to make sure that I have everything right, and I also want to associate it with the correct fact. So I'm going to find the article. It's down here at the bottom of the list, and I'll click on View. From here, I'll click on Associated Facts. I want to associate this with her name and her marriage. So I click on the green plus next to marriage, as well as the one next to her name. And then I'm going to remove the extraneous date and name that really doesn't have a fact name associated with it. Look and see if there's any others that I'd like to include. When I'm done, I click on the X. And then when I click on marriage over here in 1957, you'll notice that the purple lines go to the correct facts and documents. This was the original fact that didn't really have a name to it, so I'm going to delete that one. You can do it whichever way you like. It's always a good idea, once you've found an article, to look at the rest of the newspaper. What were the headlines of the day? What else was going on? Just to get some context. So this particular paper is the Charlotte Observer. And if I go to the upper left, I can click there. But if I just want to see the rest of the pages, I'm going to click on the film strip and I can page through it. You'll notice in this particular issue, there were 76 pages. So there's a lot here. If I just enter one in, it will take me to the front page. Seems football was the news of the day. Virginia beat North Carolina. Georgia beat Georgia Tech. What was the weather the day they got married? Windy and much colder. And it looks like it was colder than usual for that time of year. What were the headlines? Yep, the weather was the most important article or the most important story of the day. But they were also talking about Sputnik and that the South intrigues Miss America. This just gives you an idea of what was happening at the time. Context is always important. Senator Jenner will not seek re-election. No idea who that is, but he's not running again. Assassins kill 7 but miss their target. What was going on in this time? You can then page through the rest of the paper and just look. I always like to look at the ads of the time. What were the stores that they shopped at? What were the things that they were buying? It looks like Belk's department store was a big store in the area. It's around Christmas time. It was December 1st. Maybe some child wanted a train. Also, clothes were on sale. It gives you an idea of what was on sale and how much things cost. Now, the Charlotte Observer was a big newspaper, so I'm also going to look at the Gastonia Gazette. It's more of a small hometown kind of paper, and you might see different things. Here, there are 32 pages in the issue. If I go to the first page, you'll notice in this paper, the first page from the issues around this time is just missing. But you can still look through the paper and get an idea of some of the things that were there and that were interesting for that time. So once you find a paper with one of your ancestors, chances are good another one will show up there. The easiest place to find the right papers to look in is to go to your clippings tab. Find an article and then click on the paper name. I'm at the Gastonia Gazette here. I can search for James Payne. That's Jenny Payne's father. Chances are he may show up here as well. I know he lived until 1923. So I'm going to enter 1881, which is when this paper started, to 1923. And I do find one article. It looks like it appeared more than once. And as we go over here and we look at the article, we see that it's all about boundaries and other information like that. They're looking to move the county line. And this gives me a very exact place where my grandfather's farm was, or my great-grandfather's farm was. And it also tells me, since this article was in 1915, he may be in a different county in 1910 than he was in 1920. You get all sorts of interesting information. It looks like he moved, but he didn't. They just moved the county line. Now I'm going to try looking for him with his initial, James R. Payne. His name was James Robert Payne. Nothing here looks like a hit. But you should always try these variations because you never know where your ancestor will show up. I look at this page. It's a list of names. I search around because it may not have your ancestor, but maybe you'll see a name that pops out at you and you're like, I know that guy. Always look. All right, now I'm going to search for Jenny. See if there's more articles on her. And I do find a few in here. So I'm going to open all three of these in other tabs. It makes it a lot easier to flip between them as I compare information. This first one is the attendance honor roll. She was born around 1907, so I guess she was what, 8? She had perfect attendance. You'll also find in these small town newspapers these little announcements. Mr. and Mrs. Jim Payne was visiting so-and-so. And here, the Summers were visiting Mr. and Mrs. Jim Payne. Don't forget, women were often listed by the Mrs. husband's name. I noticed that my great-grandfather's was often listed as Jim, so I'll type that in and see if I can find anything else about him. Think about variations on names. Newspapers doesn't make that translation for you. And here's the same article about the Summers visiting the Paynes. But you always want to try and look at those different variations. You should also try and look under other married names. I'm looking for Jenny Turner here. That was her other name. This one is too early. She wasn't a Miss Jenny Turner. She was a Mrs. Jenny Turner. So I'm not really finding anything here. But like I said, you always want to try different variations. And always go and look because you may have a name off or you may not think it's relevant, but it is. Also make sure that you look for brothers and sisters or cousins that you knew live in the area. Here I look for Floyd Payne. You never know when the OCR will get one person's name right and one person's name wrong. And here we have Miss Jenny and Mr. Floyd Payne. The Payne isn't close enough to the Jenny to pick him up or to pick it up, but the Floyd Payne does. And again, it's one of those cute little social announcements. So if you ever find yourself with a few extra minutes, I suggest going to your clippings page, pick an article, look at who it's about, and then click on the newspaper name and start searching for your other ancestors. You never know what you might find. Next thing, you want to find other papers around that area. There are 3 quick ways to do that. One is to click Browse, choose the state, and then choose the city. We're so used to thinking in counties, but you want to go in the city here. Charlotte was one of the papers in that area. And then this will give you a list of all the Charlotte papers. Another way to do it is to click on Papers and then type in the name of the city, and that will give you all the papers. You can also change the dates to limit it to the time where your ancestor lived. From there, you can search in those papers. You'll see that in the upper right. My favorite is the map. From the papers page, click on Map, and then reposition the map so you get closer and closer to the place that you're looking for. And this is really useful when you have ancestors who live really close to state lines. because they may not just show up in one state. They may show up across the state line. You don't know which newspaper is going to be the gossipiest. Is that a word? You want all the best. So you can click on these little red place markers and they will show you the names of papers. And that'll maybe give you some new places to look, because the name of the city is not always going to be there. So you want to sort of open your eyes a little bit and look at more papers. So real quick, the 5 things you should do every time you find a newspaper article. 1, make a clipping. That way you can share it and save it everywhere you want to. Next, save it to your ancestry tree and associate it with the appropriate facts. It'll make it easier to find it later. Then check out the rest of the newspaper. Get some context about what was going on in those times. Could be headlines, could be ads, could be social columns, sports, anything to give you a feel for the times. The 4th thing you want to do is search for other people in the newspaper. This might be something you do when you have an extra few minutes or 3 hours. It's easy to get lost in newspapers, but make sure you check parents' names, brothers and sisters, spouses, anyone you can think of. And then finally, look for other papers in that area. Make sure that you're getting all the papers. All right, you're ready. Get started and go look at newspapers and see what you can find.